When I had that conversation with Nick, we talked about, okay, we can be the first lender to deliver the full end technology 100% in Spanish.
Yeah.
End to end. It had never been done. At that point in 2019, lenders would tell you it wasn't possible. You have to build cohesive and enterprise-wide executive buy-in into the things that you're doing. So just because I talked to Nick doesn't mean that every other executive believes in what you're doing. You got to take the time to get the compliance department behind it. We want to grow. We want to invest with the communities that we're servicing. It's okay to say we want to lend more loans in Black communities and Mexican communities and Hispanic communities because that's going to generate wealth.
Okay, so welcome to Rate of Success podcast. I am super excited today. We are joined by the one and only Camilo Escalante.
Thank you.
This is something I've been looking forward to. Somehow I tricked him into coming to the office to do this. So Camilo, why don't you talk a little bit about your current position and job role currently?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me, Eric. We've built a friendship over the last couple of years, and just seeing you and the way that you support people is awesome. And so obviously it wasn't hard for me to come, man. I want to support.
I appreciate that.
My current role, so I'm the executive director of diverse segments at Rate. So it's a fancy title, but at the end of the day, what we're looking to do is just lend and bring our products to more multicultural communities across the country. Really, it's just about empowering all our loan officers to better serve all communities in their markets, right? And I have a career and a background for 20 years as an originator, a top producer. And that makes me a little bit different. I think that's what makes me dangerous, that I was in the trenches. I know what it's like to have a pipeline of 30 loans that you're closing. I know what it's like to recruit teams and, work with the processing and then, also try to do marketing and that aspect of it. But that's the background of how I got here, but
So quick question, because we always talk about this. It's always one of the first questions that we ask is nobody goes to college and says, I'm going to get in the mortgage industry, okay, or real estate for that matter. We all kind of end up in the mortgage business by mistake. So what was your path kind of getting into the mortgage industry, and how did you stumble upon it? Because I know it wasn't a plan, because none of us planned to do this.
That's it. Yeah, no, it's right. So I went to a Big Ten school, Fighting Illini, let's go.
There we go.
I graduated and I worked for Kraft Foods out of college. And back then in the early 2000s, it was a Fortune 100 company. And it was a big job that I had gone out of school. And, I actually worked in Mississippi with the Walmart account because Walmart was king back then. Walmart was Amazon's in the early 2000s. Yeah. And so it was a big deal that I was working with the Walmart account. But long story short, with my 2-year experience back then, I realized I was really good at sales. And I was able to crush the sales numbers versus people that had been in that role for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm early 20s. And all I got was a pat on the back because of it. There was no additional commission. And I was like, wait a second. I don't know about that. So back then, the real estate market was booming. My mom was a realtor in Chicago, and I've been kind of itching, Mississippi. It's the South, I mean, I had a great time, traveling in the South, but I'm a city boy, I wanted to be back in the city. So I was itching to get back, and, at that time, I wanted to make more money. And my mom was like, look, there's a really big need for bilingual loan officers. We don't have any. You should come check it out. Get back here. I think, it'd be a great career for you. And she, being a realtor, steered me towards the security of the financial side, because she said the real estate side is very, depending on whatever's going on with the economy. Yeah. There's big booms and there's big, but if you're a loan officer, there's more flexibility on adapting to the market. Yeah. And so that's when I got in. That's what got me in there. I would love to say that it was helping people, but in my early 20s, it was about, a career that I could make some good money.
Yeah, so you get into the business, and so what year did you actually start?
2004.
So just before the housing crisis.
A couple of years, 2007, 2008.
Yeah, so you had a good, it was, you thought you were amazing because it was, as we all did during that time, because we got in around the same time. I got in around 2001, so you had the build up there. So what was that experience like going through that? Is that anything you lean on today? Kind of what happened and how the market, because I'm sure it was disruptive where you were working, what that for consumers. Yeah. Did that, leave a mark on you that you lean on today?
It's incredible that you're asking me that, man, because it really does. The experience when I first came in, my mother, I'm Colombian. I came here from Colombia in 1989. I was 10 years old. And so I'm an immigrant, not even first generation. My daughter is first generation. I'm an immigrant. And my parents, we came here because of this amazing country, and we wanted to build a better life and escaping the instability in Colombia at that time with the drug war.
I ask this a lot because it shaped me experiencing that, getting calls from consumers, everything really kind of helped me develop my. So I'm just curious how you lean on that even today in your position.
So when we came here, and my mom got into real estate, which is great. We were helping Spanish-speaking immigrants, right? In the early 2000s. That's who her clientele was. It was a lot of immigrants that were looking to buy homes. These folks were uneducated about the process. They needed to really have their hand held because they didn't understand the documents, the process, how to buy a home. But they were hardworking, and they wanted to buy a house. They wanted a piece of the American dream. And so we wanted to do a good job by them. But to your point, leading up to the recession, it was unfortunate. A lot of people talk about, for folks that never saw the recession or never lived, were doing business back then, when you hear about it, they say it was the big bad banks.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of professionals that were pointing people in the right direction, including Latinos that were taking advantage of Latino customers because they were in a position of trust, and they would point people towards a bad mortgage product. And seeing that firsthand, definitely made an impact because there was a lot of people that just wanted to make a lot of money really quick, and they weren't really thinking about what was in the best interest of the customer.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to tell people no. Yeah. That's the best thing that people like you and I,
absolutely,
we prepare people. You put them in the right track. That's why you're such an amazing leader because. Sometimes people aren't ready. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
I always say our job is not to convince people to buy a home. It's to give them the tools to be able to do so when they're ready is essentially what I tell you.
That's awesome.
If you do that one thing, your career will be fulfilling. If you need to get deals closed because financially or you're just motivated by that, you're going to struggle in this business.
Yeah. Don't put somebody in a mortgage you wouldn't put a family member.
Exactly.
Right.
100%. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that experience absolutely ingrained. It got ingrained in my brain because I just saw a lot of people to get taken advantage of, and I saw I didn't realize at that time what was missing from the industry, but fast forward another 10 years and another part of my career, it all clicked, and that's kind of what when I started thinking about this career and this position and role that I'm in, where the opportunity was.
So I kind of want to get into that because I don't think anybody who is an immigrant comes here and says, I'm going to run diverse segments for, one of the top 5 lenders in the country. So it says a lot about you, and it's why I've always been drawn to who you are and how you lead.
Thank you,
because it's inspiring to me as someone who was born here and doesn't have any of the same life experiences that you have, to see someone that has that vision. So what was that like as you went through the business, that you had the mind that says, I'm going to go, this is what I can do, I can do better, I can bring value? Like what do you get that from your mom, or where does that drive come from, where you have that kind of no fear attitude?
Thank you. It means the world. It definitely is my mom, right?
Yeah.
Mothers make a huge impact in you, but she's always been the one that has a vision and a place for us to go. But, I think, Eric, you probably have this, and because I still see you've been crushing it for so long, but now you like to lead other people and empower them, and you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You do that as part of your strategy, but, you're a huge producer on your own, and you're helping and making an impact, building other people. So, for me, when I was originating, I spent the first 4 years helping the Latino community. And then because of the recession, we had to pivot, and top producers pivot. So I started doing business with more investors, 2008, 2012. And then I started doing business with developers and private hedge fund groups. And I became a preferred lender. And I came for some non-warrantable products, projects. And they were like Miami, in Atlanta, in Las Vegas. And that experience taught me, okay, here I can do business online, digitally, and market, and my business blew up. So when I was doing business the first 4 years, I was working my butt off. I was working on Saturdays, Sundays, meeting with clients, but it was super inefficient. So I couldn't really break over 20 to 30 million. But then when I started doing business in this other space with more affluent customers, I was able to be more efficient. I was able to do business outside of the state. So I kind of saw both worlds, right?
Yeah.
And then right around 2015, I did get involved with NAHREP, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. For people that don't know, I know you're a big, supporter, and thank you for supporting. This is an organization that is about advancing sustainable homeownership for the Latino community. And it's basically Latinos coming together to not be victims, but be proactive about how to build wealth through real estate, right? And so it's an amazing organization. And that that was the first time I realized that there was an industry gap. That, it made me think outside of my world, where I was like focused on sales, focused on helping my customers and providing a great experience. But I wasn't thinking really like bigger. Yeah. I was thinking in my own world. And then I started looking at, through NAHREP, learning, and I was like, oh yeah, there's really hasn't been a company that really has put together the whole package for diverse communities. And whether it's African American, Asian, Hispanic, there's really not been a company that has demonstrated to diverse communities that they want that business all the way, right? And so, what does that look like? Well, the customer service, the processing, the products, right? So FHA, no overlays, bank statement loans, ITIN loans, right? Like putting that infrastructure in, and then marketing, right? And so I was like, wait a second, there's an opportunity here. Yeah. There's really an opportunity here nationwide. And, I think at some point in my career, it just clicked that it was about making impact. Not so much thinking about I call it this, and maybe you can, it resonates with you a little bit, but in my younger years, even though I was successful, I was making decisions from a position of fear. Yeah, 100%. I was I was afraid of being broke. I was afraid of letting my parents down. I was afraid of pursuing things, and I was making decisions from a position of fear. And then as I became a man, and I got more like confident. Yeah. I started making decisions from a position of confidence. Yeah. And so it was about making an impact and saying to myself, I have this knowledge, I have this ability, I think I could lead an effort, and just thinking bigger. Yeah. And so I actually, RATE had been recruiting me for a long time because I was one of the top Latino loan officers. Yeah. And I was like, I think I'm interested in coming to work for you guys, but not the way you guys are thinking about it.
So what was that conversation like? Because we've talked about it a little bit, but you present this idea. And what was that? How did that evolve over time? Because I'm sure, it took them some time to understand exactly your vision. Yeah. And I'm sure you had to spend some time kind of really thinking about that and how to present it.
That's a cool story. I haven't really told the story as much. So for those that don't know the amazing Jim Eboli, right? Yeah. He, obviously the fearless leader of the Midwest. I think companies, there's a lot of great companies out there, but, leadership matters. The people you work with matter. Yeah. And Jim had been reaching out to me for a couple of years as far as like, hey, come check out RATE. And just being honest, back then I told him, look, RATE is a great company with amazing technology, but it's very affluent. Yeah. The brand is very affluent. I don't know if I come over, this is like 2015, 2016. Yeah. If I come over and, we're going to be able to get FHA done, if the bilingual services are there, it's going to be a challenge. Yeah. And I'm not ready to do that. But, when I decided...
In full disclosure, I had a lot of the same concerns before I came here. Right? It's like I told myself I would never come here. Jim Eboli said he would never come here. So we both, RATE was like the dark side,
Yeah. And so I think for us, when Jim came and said, hey, he had given me a call a couple times, and I actually called him up, and I was like, hey, Jim, I'm ready to have a conversation and talk to you. So we went and had a breakfast, and he had his whole pitch about, coming over to be a top producer. And I was like, hey, this is like 2019. So it was before George Floyd in 2020. This is 2019. He was, going through his thing, and I was like, hey, I have an idea. Here's what I want to do. I think you guys need a leader that actually has a strategy to help RATE become the #1 brand for diverse communities across the country. You guys have so many good things, but you got to bring that platform and to these diverse communities. And the way to do that is to actually invest in these infrastructure things that I want to lay out for you. And it's like, because, a lot of times I haven't been a top producer. I was making good money. I've been investing my money. That also gave me the confidence to do things not out of a position of fear. Like, where am I going to go to make the most money? Yeah. It was, where am I going to go to make the most impact? I wanted to go to the best lender, lending thousands of people, because then I can make a big impact.
I would say you want to have a seat at the table where you can have impact. And you want to be able to have an impact in the things that you say, and you're not just an employee.
Yeah. And also, it was like, but understanding that there has been many diverse, executives at other places, I knew that sometimes it's like a token position. That doesn't really have oomph, and so I wanted to say, look, if the company will commit to invest and build these infrastructure projects, we will move in the right direction. But you need somebody that's got to lead that. It's sometimes some companies will like take a sales producer, a top producer, and they'll be like, okay, you do this for us on the side.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
They got, how busy and demanding your job is leading people.
Your motivation's over here. And yeah.
So you got to have somebody that's zoned in. And then the next call, was with Nick on the CEO or COO. And we met in person. We went to Victor Bar.
Yeah.
Right. We had a cocktail there and, across from HQ, and then I think I gave the best pitch of my life. Yeah. No, but I sat with Nick, and then that's where I laid out
Nick's one of us though, because Nick's like someone I've spent a lot of time with, more so than I think at Victor at times, and Nick is very sales. I mean, that's the thing that I noticed coming here is how it's very sales focused.
Yeah, and
if you have a good idea that be able to have an impact, to use your word, they're always open to ideas, and they're always willing to invest in, and you obviously, so on that real quick, I just want to touch on it. So you obviously have accomplished a lot, but you had to sit down with them and you had to have this vision. Okay. Yep. Thinking back on that now, like we're talking about it now, is there anything you would have done differently, or did it kind of work out, kind of the way you had envisioned?
I wish rates wouldn't have doubled.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When that happened. But on that, but did rates, being where they are, did it give you another opportunity though to focus on some of these other things? Because maybe if rates were lower, we would have maybe not had the manpower to do some of the heavy lifting that was needed to be done with the digital mortgage and all these things.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are always things that you can't control. I think, to answer the question, is there something you could have done better? You can always look back and say, there was a couple of things I could have done better, right? I think in business and in life, you have to go with the flow. You have to adapt, and so I always say you have to have a plan, and you have to have a vision, but part of that is adapting according to what the
Did
conditions
anything
are.
Surprise you, or was more difficult than you expected?
I was prepared you have to build cohesive and enterprise-wide executive buy-in into the things that you're doing. So just because I talked to Nick doesn't mean that every other executive believes in what you're doing. You got to take the time to get the compliance department behind it. So here's the thing. When I had that conversation with Nick, we talked about, okay, we can be the first lender to deliver the full end technology 100% in Spanish. End to end. It had never been done. At that point in 2019, lenders would tell you it was impossible. That you could not deliver this in Spanish because the compliance world was saying that it was impossible.
Translation of words and things like that were very, there weren't...
The closing disclosures, the loan estimates, that it wasn't allowed.
Okay.
There was all these misconceptions about what it was. And at the end of the day, if you just invested in the technology and if you invested in the infrastructure and processing, you could digest it as a company. So, not only did I talk about, okay, here's what we call the language access program today. We didn't call it the LAP back then, but it was like, I talked about the infrastructure, and I talked about building consumer services in Spanish, technology in Spanish, with products for the community, and then the marketing. That became the language access program, and now we're expanding that to other languages. But back then, it was not just talking about it, but then it was also, here's how we can actually digest this as a company and build it out. And so the first phase was the bilingual processing. It wasn't the technology. It was like, let's focus the first couple of months on bringing in bilingual services, because I knew that would attract loan officers at the beginning. If we could go to a loan officer and say, hey, come here and we can service your loans in Spanish.
Did you kind of look at it from a standpoint of, I always say, instead of recruiting, more of attraction? If you build this platform and service that's going to attract the talent that we want to work with, and maybe not attract the people we don't want to work with, because you're building a value that if they see it as value, because I think the biggest thing that I've always struggled with in my career is and I'm not bilingual, but I would always have a daughter or a son that would have to go through the paperwork with mom and dad. And now with what you've created, they're able to actually, be educated. I think most of what you're doing fits into the biggest need right now is education.
Yeah.
Like that is the biggest need. I mean, the average first-time home buyer last year was 38.
Yeah.
Like 38, like 10 years ago, it was 28. Yeah. So it's a 10-year delay. And a lot of that is just all revolved around education.
One piece, the other piece, affordability.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Affordability is huge. But I feel like with multi-units, especially where we are, there's not obviously a lot of those elsewhere. We're seeing a lot more families moving in together, like multi-generational moves where, mom and dad are moving in with kids. We've seen a lot of that, more than I've ever seen. I think last year it was up to almost 20% from the year prior, multi-generation purchases. So it's interesting seeing the market evolve. So you built, so you have the language access program. Is there been any challenge with getting because we're kind of stubborn as loan officers, like to get us to buy into anything, or has that been pretty easy?
No, I mean, every phase is a challenge.
Yeah.
Every phase of it. So the bilingual processing component, putting together that infrastructure at the beginning was challenging. The technology piece, there was a couple of misconceptions. Externally, people will say, well, it's not worth it to build the technology in Spanish because people are not going to use it. And I think what happens is that when you don't build the full experience in Spanish and it's not user-friendly, if it's clunky, that creates confusion for the customer. So a lot of companies will say, well, here's a 1003 in Spanish, or a mini 1003.
Yeah.
But then after they apply, everything else is in English.
And what they sign at closing, everything is all going to be, okay.
Everything's in English. Yeah. So they go back to the customer, or they can't use it on their phone. It's not really user-friendly. That creates a more confusing process, and then people don't end up using the technology. So that's what other people experience. Because we are a fintech company, and we are proprietary technology, everything's in-house, we make sure that the full experience is in Spanish and it's user-friendly. So
can you just elaborate that a little bit so we make sure we get, full experience is digital mortgage, all the way through to the end. So end-to-end digital experience in bilingual, in Spanish.
From looking us up online to servicing your loan, 100% in Spanish. Yeah. We are the only lender in the country that has that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And you're talking about 60 million people right now in this country, right? Yeah. So, and I do want to take a second to, when you're doing big things, you need big people and smart people, even sometimes smarter people than you around, right? Yeah. And I got to give a huge shout out to Arlyn Kalinski. She is my colleague and the SVP of Fair and Equitable Lending Strategies at Rate right now. And she really built the platform. I've envisioned it. So, I always tell her, I'm like, I was Steve Jobs. I envisioned. She's Wozniak. She built the Apple computer.
So let's talk about Arlyn a little bit, because I think I have Tom and I have Juliet. There's people that we have in our world that kind of have such a huge impact on us and help us do the things that we do. So how long have you guys worked together, and how did you start working together?
So. We've been working together since 2021. Okay. I came to Rate in September of 2020, and she came in February of 2021. Okay. And then, to actually implement and execute the vision that we were working on. And then she made it bigger and better, and she made it the product that we see today. And so the way that worked out was, at that time, we had a chief compliance officer, and, I think... she recognized that I could definitely go out and pitch, deliver, and talk about this product and help us grow, but I needed help building it. And so she went out and found Arlyn, and Arlyn and I talked about what makes us passionate, and she has an extensive experience in banking, and she dealt with the subprime crisis a lot. And so we immediately clicked on just helping people, providing this experience to avoid fraud, avoid people being taken advantage of. And then we wanted to do something impactful together, and that's when we started joining forces in 2021.
That's great. That's great. What do you think the biggest gap right now in the diverse segments as far as for homeownership, and why homeownership? Obviously we're making some progress, but what do you think obviously affordability. Is any access to anything missing, or, I'm sure education and affordability. Is there any big missing piece that maybe you can't solve for, that you really need boots on the ground for?
It's an interesting question, Eric. I think that if I was going to say that affordability, language access, but I think it's also marketing and reaching the consumer the right way. I think what
on the marketing piece, because I know this is something we've talked about. I know you're really working on this. How different is marketing to this group compared to what a mortgage company is typically used to do? Is it a big change? Is how you want to do that? Do you have to be more creative? Is that really the challenge that you're kind of trying to work through right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the answer is marketing to diverse communities is being done by other industries outside of the mortgage industry.
Yeah.
For some reason, the mortgage industry has been very slow to really adapt to what the landscape is right now.
Yeah.
50% of first-time home buyers today are minorities. That's according to NAHREP.
Yeah.
So that's 50%. That is a lot of food on the table to not want to, to leave it there, right? To not really position your company to reach those customers. And so when it comes to marketing, it goes like, okay, well, if you're in New York, for example, and it's the way that people are typically marketing to the Latino community, let's say, they'll be like, okay, the Latino community, let's create a flyer. One flyer for the whole company, nationwide.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's like a Mexican family. Okay, great, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in New Jersey, New York, it's 90% Dominican and Puerto Rican. It's Afro-Latino. It's not Mexican. There's not Mexicans. In the New Jersey, New York area is the largest Latino demographic MSA in the country.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's not Mexican. One of the second ones is in Florida, and that is Cubans and Puerto Ricans and Colombians. South Americans. That's not also Mexicans. So you're talking about a whole nother swat of people that have different dialect, that talk differently.
Yeah.
That's different. And then you have, the Midwest, you have California, you have Texas. It's more Mexican. So just within the diversity of the Latino community, people look totally different. It's also, so you have to look at, okay, are we regionalizing the marketing so that it looks like the people that we're wanting to serve in that community? Now let's get into the weeds of our industry, the way that other industries talk about it. What does a first-time home buyer look like in New York versus Chicago? The median price points are different. The jobs that they work might be different. So when you're doing marketing, they should resemble that, right?
Yeah.
We have the data at rate to look back at what a first-time home buyer looks like.
So is it taking the data and then developing marketing that fits more that? And that's kind of your goal of trying to do more centralized based on the area.
Well, the reason it's important for us
totally makes sense. I mean, I love the idea. Yeah.
And the reason why it is important, and it's because at rate 90%, if not more, of our funding volume comes from our retail sales force.
Yeah.
Folks like I was and like you are, that are in the community, lending to their community. We're not one of the companies that has like a big data call center and it's going to some place in Cleveland or whatever, right? They're not in the community. So these sales originators, these leaders in the community, typically in this position, they're doing their own marketing, right? You're doing your own marketing.
Yeah.
You're investing in it. So if you don't have assets that work for you, you're not going to want to invest in those assets.
Yeah.
You're not, and as we're getting into an era of more social media, more digital marketing, the vision right now is to develop assets for the sales force that have regionalization, that look like the people that are in that community, and that the company has piloted and demonstrates it works. So that when we go to you, we say, hey, here's a couple of call to actions. These are brand awareness. It's not going to be an end-all be-all solution, but it's a packet that you can start investing.
Where does, video, where does home buying seminars, community events, like, is it a little bit of everything? Like, where's the biggest opportunity moving forward?
I think the biggest bang for the buck is in digital.
Okay.
But if I was going to go like on a scale to start out, because you got to digest it, right?
Yeah.
Events, right? So you have to foster and empower the sales force to be better at events, because everybody can do events. And you can say, okay, I want to do events. So how do I promote those events? How do I look better at those events?
Yeah.
Activation kits, swag, budgets to promote the events. Like that's like the basics,
Yeah.
And then you grow from that into...
You're kind of building trust too when you do those events. Yeah.
And then you go from that into, digital marketing, because that's the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah.
But having a component of, hey, the company I'm working with has a strategy for this market.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. And then you go into, once you're successful and you have the budgets, because everyone's got to invest in, then you go into the, out of home, digital out of home. The the TV, radio. That's like at the bottom. I think people immediately gravitate to that because it's got the biggest kind of attraction. But you will do a lot with events and digital.
Right? I mean, honestly, I see the people in my industry, obviously real estate too, that do the best are doing community events that don't necessarily even revolve around real estate, because they're in the process of building that trust first and giving back to the community. Okay. Which, you mentioned in the beginning and, about leadership and, if you do this for the money, it gets really boring really, really fast. Yeah. If you do this to help other people, whether it be, me helping out other loan officers or, my average loan size is $280,000. Like I've been, it's what I do and it's what I love to do. I'm 30%, government loans. Like I love first-time home buyers and that experience. Like, and I feel like it's almost like, I say it every year, like what I always think about is like when at Christmas time, I always get a little bit emotional thinking about it because I always think about as a kid, how many memories I have at my house. And you figure all these people that we help, okay? And a lot of them are celebrating holidays or with family, and they're doing that. And we help people do that. We lose sight of the security that it gives kids and families. And I think that is, so when I see other realtors or other lenders and they're really they're investing in their community, okay? And not just doing, fancy events with realtors, but really investing in their community, that's where they're having the biggest impact. And I think as an industry, I think we've, in a lot of ways kind of failed our communities at times because we've been so profit driven and we've, companies have, we've had this gravy train going at times and we kind of lose sight. But that's why I love, you've made me think about it. I love, NAHREP for a couple different reasons. Number one, I love what the group does and what they believe in. But what I've seen it do, obviously what it's done for you, but Jose and his transformation and leadership that he's shown and his growth as a, loan officer is like, to me, there's very few organizations that will pull that out of people. Yeah. Because sometimes it surprises you. Sometimes you don't believe that someone has that, but you put them in the room with the right people and it can really change who you are and make you, versus if you just sit at home and you be a loan officer making cold calls all day. Sometimes you just got to get in the room with the right people and it can completely transform. So that's why I've loved, look what it did for you and Jose and, even Devante, and what he's done. It's like helping the community, I feel, is something that I think as I hope, as rates move higher, affordability, if we all focus on that just a little bit more collectively, I think the impact can be massive. Yeah, and I totally agree that it's like, why do you do things? So in addition to the language access program, with Arlyn, we started the community outreach effort in 2023. So a little bit of history here because sometimes people don't know the history. So the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, that was passed in the 1960s around fair housing, and basically it's supposed to be in line so that there's no redlining. Okay, redlining still exists by the big banks. But the CRA only regulates FDIC institutions. But it used to be back in the day, 70% of mortgages were done by FDIC institutions. As you know today, that's not the case. 70% of mortgages are done at independent mortgage bankers like us. Right? But we don't fall underneath the CRA requirements. So we don't have to necessarily do some things that the CRA banks have to do as far as community engagement. Right? Now, we can have a whole separate conversation whether the big banks' community engagement strategy has been working, because it hasn't. Otherwise because they still fail the redlining exams. But at the end of the day, what we built at a rate, we started looking at community outreach, not like a thing that we have to do, that we're being forced, but as an opportunity to service the community and bring loan originations to the community. We want to grow. We want to invest with the communities that we're servicing. It's okay to say we want to lend more loans in Black communities and Mexican communities and Hispanic communities, because that's going to generate wealth. And so our community outreach strategy started in 2023. We basically started looking at exactly what we were talking about. 3 levels of engagement. The first level is the activity that is being done by the loan officers. And then the next level is like partnerships, like NAHREP and NAHREP and ARIA.
and kind of partnering with organizations that are supporting financial education or home ownership, and how can we support that in a way that makes sense for the company? Because we don't just want to cut big checks and then not show up and not be engaged with an organization. It's got to be working, right? It's got to be a good partnership.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, at the bottom is our own events like Great University or bigger partnerships, maybe with the HBCUs and other organizations. So there's like 3 levels of community outreach. And we started this initiative in 2023, and now we're executing it. And no independent mortgage banker has that type of...
I think you've done something else, though, that I think you're being a little bit modest about, is that you've also empowered your sales force to be able to go out to community. Because what better way than to have 200, 300 loan officers have these tools, but not only the tools, but a leader like you, because we all take your leadership, okay, and your passion for what you're trying to build, and Arlyn and Nick and everybody's investment, okay, and now that trickles down to everybody else, okay, because we didn't have this before. When I came here, we didn't have this focus, and I think that is the biggest piece, because now you're inspiring all these other people to have the same impact that you have, because again, we're attracting people that have that mindset, that want to go out and help their communities. I see it all over LinkedIn with our loan officers, like all the things they're doing in their communities and all the things that they're doing. Like we didn't have that before.
That's
and
awesome,
you're having that impact,
Thank you.
And I just feel like, all those other things are really important, but it really takes the buy-in of all of us to really believe in what you're building and really then take it to the market and have an impact and help more families. Because at the end of the day, if we're not taking advantage of it, then none of it matters.
Yeah, no, thank you. That means a lot. And I think, and it's definitely, Arlyn, Nick, Victor, and all the sales leaders that have, supported it as well. I'll say this, that it's a really thing that we're proud of. So when prior to us coming together as a company and focusing on multicultural markets, our funded volume was under 20% from all diverse communities. We're at 34%.
Amazing.
Now.
Yeah.
So we've almost doubled it in a little bit over.
And how many loan officers? I always forget the number. Have you recruited since coming here?
So we have gone from 16% of our sales force was diverse to like 28%.
Great.
It's from multicultural communities, but it's it's like from 100 to almost 400.
It's amazing.
And the component is, this is just about we want to attract. And I love the word that you used, attract versus recruit, because it's the reality of it,
That's the thing I talk about all the time. And Julianne talk about it all the time. Like, I can get a ton of loan officers in here. I just don't want them all. Like, I want to attract the right people that come in.
The best talent from all communities.
Yeah.
That's what Rate's about. And that's honestly what drove me to this company when I was thinking about, I wanted to work with that winning mentality.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people get, let's talk a little bit about like leadership and sales and winning. Sometimes people like walk in eggshells because they're afraid of what to do or what to say, and if they say something, someone's going to get a little bit like offended. It's okay to say, when we want winners, there's a winning attitude, right? And if you're just looking to do a part-time job and not hustle and not put the grind in, we're not the place for you.
No, absolutely not.
We're not the place.
No.
We want the winners. And that's I like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think having the tools that you've built, though, is attracting a different quality of loan officer that is having a huge impact. And I think it's been inspiring for me, just personally, being in the business as long as I have, and kind of seeing, a lot of, my previous company just kind of go through the motions and not having the level of impact that you've been able to, have since coming here. But I think the other thing is that a lot of people say they want to help diverse communities. A lot of people say that they want to help first-time home buyers, but they just don't have the tools behind it. They have all the marketing.
No infrastructure.
But no infrastructure to be able to deliver on that. It's more of like, just say that you have it.
Performative.
And I think what the greatest thing I think we've done is we built the infrastructure first.
Yep.
And then now we're working on bringing it to market and really, and that's the way you should do it.
And that's the authenticity.
Yeah.
And that's the attraction. And that was the piece of, to attract, it's got to be authentic.
Yeah.
So, and that was the first conversation I had with Nick. It was exactly that piece of, we got to build it to be authentic and to do it long term. And I said the whole thing at the beginning about, we were having that conversation before George Floyd, because in 2020, that's when that happened. And that's when all these companies came out and they were like, oh, we want to do better for diverse communities. We were already, Rate was already, Nick had already, and Victor, they had already, recognized that. And that's why, even today, we're still committed to attracting the best talent and servicing, multicultural markets. And honestly, we're leaning in when everyone else is pulling back. You know? So
has there been anything like from an underwriting standpoint, like, or processing, just kind of understanding cultural differences and because I know it's something that we talk about a lot and it's something that I push hard for and a lot of times, but how much of that has been, kind of like really addressing things that have been in our industry for a long time that are now starting to finally, become better understood?
Yeah, no, it's, I was saying, like, every phase has, success is not, people think that to get to your level, all of a sudden, like, you got there and then, like, now it's easy,
no,
right?
No.
You're battling every day,
yeah.
every week. There, and especially when you have a vision and ambition, you're getting to the next phase and you're battling, right? So the first thing, when I was saying building out the infrastructure, building out the processing, getting that, building that out, then the technology, we had to, we had our challenges there. And then with that, as we started attracting loan officers to come to the company, from 80 to 200 to 300, that were more diverse, that were doing more FHA, that had different loans that were a little bit hairier, more difficult. We had that growing pain, I would say, in about 2022. 2022 and 2023, where we were working on making sure that loans were going through the system the same way, and underwriters. And, there's some things when it comes to underwriting and that you could do structurally around credit policy, right? So we worked on removing all overlays from FHA. That was like a year project that we spent on that we, got executed. That's huge. That is huge, right? So we've tripled FHA production at rate. Since
that's
2020.
The one thing I give everyone from a credit policy a lot of credit, because they've made a lot of changes since 2022 that have worked in the direction of like loosening up credit policy. And they've been very open, very open. Like I've never felt like, I always say seat at the table, because that's what I always feel like. Like I can call an executive today, get on the phone and explain a concern and have an answer 2-3 days later. As a loan officer in the field, like I've never.
Well, you're not just any loan officer,
I know,
right?
But I'm just saying, like I've never had that feedback. Like we make common sense, like decisions a lot of times. Sometimes it's not as easy, but at least they're listening. And I think that's important. I'm sure that's been a huge help for you.
Yeah. When it came to like the overlays and the way that they call people back and their process, if they raise a suspense, like working on all of that, rate's been amazing. The credit policy team has been great. A secondary team. So we, one of the things I haven't talked about is the Black Excellence Initiative, because, part of what we wanted to do when we were tackling multicultural markets, you gotta create a roadmap for people to digest things, right? So it's like if you do everything all at once, it's kind of like people get paralyzed. They don't go anywhere, right? So you got to do it in small steps, right? Because of the demographics, we went Latino. We built the infrastructure, and that's what we did in 2020, 2022. Just a huge demand. But obviously, we wanted to also serve, our Black communities, and so what we did in 2023, we had a Black Leadership Symposium. Devante was a part of it, but we brought all our Black leaders from across the company, from all departments. And we sat down and had a 2-day symposium where we talked about what our Black leaders wanted to see the company do to build that value proposition around underwriting, around marketing, around secondary, around HR, around sales support. And we put it all in there, kind of like what Victor does on the CC call.
So
calls,
you're
right?
breaking everything out, and what's working, what's
what
not.
Isn't, right? It's similar to that. And then we built out the solutions and we executed on that. And a lot of that was around, for example, we were talking about credit policy, right? It was around, making sure that loans, bond loans or FHA loans were underwritten, the same way, right? And then we talked about in the secondary department, kudos to our secondary department too, right? Because since that time, a lot of it was around down payment assistance products. We rolled out like 10 since that time, right? It's like,
I mean, Kate and the team have been like, I mean, just crazy.
And so we talked about, okay, let's do that. And then, we also had rolled out, more product for self-employed bank statement, the whole non-QM line of products, right? And in there, ITIN loans, right? Like in-house ITIN right now at rate. And so we had that piece of it. And one beautiful thing that came out of there, and it's amazing, and people will hear about it because now we're getting into the marketing, was our Black Excellence campaign. And so a lot of that was, how do we, when lenders typically look at the Black community and Black customers, they always have their messaging around credit repair, first-time home buyers.
Yeah, which is, it's not.
There is a part of that that the community wants and the community needs, that education.
You can't be leading with that, though.
Right.
Yeah.
It's Black excellence.
Yeah.
There's Black affluence, there's Black doctors, there's Black entrepreneurs, and there's yet, like, the imaging doesn't really reflect that. So our campaign,
any marketing though that leads with negativity is never going to be good. And
but you'd be surprised the industry that's what they have, right?
I see it. It drives me crazy. Just it's out there constantly, and it drives me crazy because that's not. You're not attracting. You use the word again. You're not attracting anybody by focusing on credit repair, because that's
success attracts success.
Yeah.
Right. And even so it's like, so we created the Black Excellence campaign, and part of the strategy, as an ally, because I'm not Black, right? And so it's like we created a room of Black leaders and Black thought. It was like a think tank, and they came up with all the solutions and all the things, and then we just executed on that, right? We created that kind of like think tank, and that's the things that we're putting in. That's why it's authentic in that regard. And
there's no better representation of what we want than Devontae. Yeah, like he is. He inspires me every single day. Like he is. I want him to be our first $100 million producer.
Yes.
And I just, like, for me, like my time with Devontae, like he's been such a great ally to me and the branch and the way he carries himself. And the more that he can be out in the community and helping people, I think is just really powerful for us. And we need more people like him. I mean, like, he's a great representation of what we need right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'm in agreement. And it's awesome to have, like, as we work, you build relationships and friendships with people, right? And Devontae's one of those people that it's
just instantly like it's like everything about him is just like excellence. Like
that's right.
It's excellence. Yeah. Like he exudes like a particular like aura about him that just you want to be around him. You enjoy being around him. And even in his when he thinks he's upset, like he's still nothing but respectful. Like
I don't think I've ever seen him upset.
I mean, like we'll communicate some stuff, but he tries so hard to be respectful. Like at one time, I just want to see him just lose his shit. I want to see that side of him. But so obviously, on the Black Excellence piece, like where do you think the biggest opportunity moving forward is as a company for us, but more so as an industry? Because I feel like, there just hasn't been a lot of focus on marketing in any type of community. I think, again, we all have an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been a collective effort. I never say like, I think in something like this to me is like, as an industry, we have to do better. As a company, can we fix it? Yeah. But we only touch one out of however many borrowers. Right. I think as an industry, we need more people like us to step up and other lenders and actually, I don't want to say work together, but have a plan to have a bigger impact in the communities, because we all have opinions about stuff and why things are a particular way. But I think the only thing that we can change is what we do. Yeah. And I feel like there's just so much more that we can do as companies and as an industry. Where do you feel like, the next 5 years, 10 years, where do you feel like the biggest opportunity is?
The biggest opportunity for companies?
I'm saying like, for companies to touch more diverse borrowers.
That's what there's a combination of not just having the infrastructure and the product that we have at Rate, but it's the leadership. Yeah. Right. And like you, right. And you fostering other leaders, right? That needs to happen more. Yeah. Because you instill your thoughts, and it's, regardless of the community that they're representing, it's all love. You're helping. Yeah. You're bringing in the next, the next generation of leaders. We need to see more of that, because I haven't been an originator, and I actually talked to Devontae and a couple other people around when I was doing 20 to 30 million, Eric, like 90% of my business was predominantly Latino.
Yeah.
Okay. When I started getting to 65, 70 million, it was a big mix.
Yeah.
I stepped outside of just doing the Latino business.
Yeah.
And it was because of leadership and people that pointed me and said, hey, you got to do things. Don't just focus in on one market. So I think that's what makes Devonta successful, right?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of like, originators out there, and it's like, don't be zoned in and just in one community. Like you can service everybody, right? And that goes for everybody, white, black, Hispanic.
I'll say this, and I tell everybody this. Okay, if you're bilingual, okay, every realtor that I know that is not bilingual, the question they always ask me is, do you know anybody that speaks Spanish? So to your point, there is so much business out there in places that you're not even thinking of that need bilingual services and bilingual loan officers. Like I see a lot of them, they all call in the same offices, like, because they assume that this is where the business is. Yeah. The business is everywhere. Right. And the biggest opportunities I feel like are in the communities that maybe there's not as much, focus on. Right. And, again, as long as I've been in the business, they ask me all the time, do you have a loan officer that speaks Spanish?
100%. So like, just to give you an example, because we're in Chicago. Yeah. So you have, a couple of powerful broker houses that are doing business in the Latino community. And most Latino loan originators want to call those businesses. So
they're all in the same place.
They should be in the suburbs, right?
100%. They could own, they could own that. It's one of the reasons why I built the business that I did, and I've hired, bilingual loan officers is because I got sick of people asking me if I had someone that spoke Spanish. And I wanted to pivot, and I wanted to help more people, and I didn't want to refer business out. So that's like, this is the biggest nugget from sales leaders. Like I think, whether, you're a white loan officer or a white branch manager or leader, you could be expanding to other communities 100%. And servicing other communities. And whether you're a Hispanic or black or, diverse loan originator, you should be expanding and servicing, and getting outside of your comfort zone. And that's where organizations like NAHREP and NAHREP really are awesome, because they help like professionally build a bridge for people to do business together professionally. And so it's like, that's why I'm such a big proponent. It was one of the things I told Nick when I came. I was like, all right, but NAHREP is like in business, like year one, part of it, because I knew that if we could show people that they could attend, and leverage, from our regional manager, when we have about 40 regional managers, I got about 20 of them that consistently attend. Great. NAHREP and regional events, and they're all predominantly white. Yeah. And it's great because, people they don't care. They just want to do business with people that want to do business the right way. And that's the cool thing about our company. Like, and this is the cool thing about Victor. I'll tell you this is the cool thing about Victor. Victor wants everybody to get the best service, the lowest rates, the lowest fees possible. He doesn't want disparity between the product that's out there, which a lot of companies don't care if one side or one community or one part of the country is getting rates that are half a point higher, fees that are different. Victor doesn't do it that way. No, I mean, he's very firm on his goals and what he wants to do, and it's been huge. And what I always say is, because you brought it up a little bit earlier, is like, and I think this is the big piece, is like, I always say, like, nobody's going to care about my business more than me. Like, I have to get everyone to buy into what I'm, trying to do, okay? Mm-hmm. Same with you. Like, no one's going to care about the projects you're working on, okay, more than you are. And you have to get everybody else to buy in, okay? And I think that's the value of what you've been able to do, and that's leadership is, thank you, man. You're getting a lot of us to buy into your vision, okay? Because honestly, if you would have told me what you wanted to do before, I would have been like, oh, this guy's crazy. Like, what is he talking about? But like, you made it happen. Like, you delivered it. You brought it to where we are today, and now we're attracting people. So I think that's the biggest sign of a leader is like, it's one thing. I think we all have ideas on leadership and what they are. I never thought I'd be in a leadership position. I was a loan officer that just wanted to do, and I'll never forget. Jim called me up one day, and I was like, our branch manager had left. I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? I don't have any, who's going to do it? He's like, well, you are. Yeah. I was like, no, I'm not. And then 2 months later, I'm branch manager. And I kind of got thrown in, and he kind of threw me in, but I think that's what. And now you're an area manager. Well, congratulations, I know. Right? Yeah. So now I'm like, I'm kind of, everything I didn't expect to do, but I guess that's what happens. Yeah. But so you're getting people to buy in and kind of believe in the things that you're doing. And then now that what that's done is it's kind of trickled down, and now we have, you know, other area managers coming in that have that same vision because they're like, oh, look what Camilo built. I want to go be a part of that. And now it's Jim's job's easier because from a recruiting standpoint, your job's easier. And now we're really starting to get some momentum.
Really?
Where do you feel like, you know, this kind of takes us down the line? Because I know you think a lot about next steps, and I know you're working a lot on marketing, but where do you kind of feel like, you know, the next evolution of kind of the language access program? Yeah,
Great
everything.
Question.
Yeah.
No, so we want to be the #1 brand for multicultural communities in this country, in all communities. But you know, we want to be the #1 brand, and what that takes is, you know, so to do that in multicultural communities, one competitive advantage is language services.
Yeah.
Right. So we built out from a compliance standpoint, because we take the application in Spanish and disclose it in Spanish. We are now the only lender in all 50 states that can market, advertise, and solicit in all 50 states without any restriction in Spanish. Okay. That is a huge competitive advantage. Yeah. So now that's why we're ready to market. So now this marketing thing is going to go into, okay, not just the digital, but TV, radio, you know, sports partnerships, soccer, things like that, right? Now we can really put dollars and do that. And then it's the same thing, you know, as we built out the infrastructure for Mandarin. So we're doing disclosures in Mandarin, Vietnamese.
Wow.
You know, there's places where Polish, Haitian, right? And then what type of marketing can we do there, right? So in this country, there is about 60 million legal foreign-speaking folks, right? 60 million. That's a huge community. Yeah. You know, in the best year of the mortgage industry, which was 2021, there was only about 5 million purchase transactions that year. Yeah. That's 5 million purchase transactions for the entire country, right? And there's 60 million foreign-speaking individuals, right? Yeah. So, you know, there's no lender out there telling that community, hey, we're the place for you. Yeah. If you know, like that's the evolution of the language access program. Yeah. We're gonna lean into that. And
do you think a lot of it comes down to trust too? Like, is there a lot of distrust? I mean, I feel like that's the thing that we always struggle with. There's so much distrust, whether it be, you know, I find this with, I think it's a lot has to do with why first-time homebuyer age is so high at 38. I think affordability is one thing. But the other thing I think it is, I think a lot of these people maybe witnessed their mom or dad go through 2008. Yeah. And psychologically, either mom and dad are worried about, you know, their kids entering that, or they experienced it. They were at home when, you know, they had to leave and
rent.
Yep. And like, I feel like psychologically that's still kind of hanging over a lot of people's, you know, mindset when they're thinking about becoming a homeowner. So I think there's a lot of things. So that's why I always go back to education and trust, because I still feel like as much as we do and as great of a sales force that we have, there's still a lot of distrust for mortgage institutions in general.
Yeah. So there's like nuances within that, because I think you're totally right when you're talking about millennials in this country, right? But when you're going back to the 60 million people that speak another language at home, and we're talking about not just Spanish, Mandarin, Vietnamese, all these other languages, those are immigrants. Yeah, that's what it is. It's in most immigrants, me myself haven't been one. We're just happy to be here, man. And I don't care if rates are 7 or 12. I'm going to buy a house. Yeah, yeah. Because in our countries, it takes, you know, from back home, there is no 10% down, 3.5% down product. It's like 50% down. Yeah. And there's 10-year terms. And so home buying is like, unless you come from wealth, the disparity, that's what makes this country so beautiful. That home ownership is actually attainable. And so for a lot of those, you know, immigrants, like, it's just like, let's get to work and let's buy a house. Yeah. So if we're a lender that's, reaching those consumers, we have an amazing customer. Yeah, yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a massive opportunity when you I'm thinking as you're talking like that, like it's just, again, my life experience is so different. I don't think of, that's why I love talking with you, because it makes me think about things differently. And it really makes me look at it from a different perspective. I find that when I talk to Fabian or Sophia, like, they'll say things or Devante, and it's like, it makes me like so much better as a loan officer. And that's why I love, you know, what you've brought to our sales forces, because we, you know, someone like myself, I need to hear things about other life experiences. And I don't think we do that enough as loan officers, because the more we kind of know and understand, but it's also the reason why, you know, it's so important to have these conversations with our customers, because those stories are what help us, educate and get them into the ability to buy a home. And sometimes with digital, we don't get that.
Right.
We don't get that same human connection, but we have to find a way to be able to. I always say we have to have the perfect amount of technology, but also the perfect amount of human touch. And it's really both of it is what is the key. And if you lean on one too much, you kind of lose the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think you're totally right. Something that I was thinking that you said, and I wanted to talk about because I think it's important for everybody to understand. Obviously, the political climate is it's sensitive right now, but this country is amazing, and homeownership is at the core of that. And that's still true, right? For many people. And for people that are like, I did about 3 years ago, I did a keynote at the University of Chicago with a group of Brazilians that came in. We came in and they wanted to know about the mortgage infrastructure in this country. And I basically talked about how it's the institutions of like the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the securitization, that secondary market, the fact that lenders can do a loan, package it up and sell it, allows them to do loans with lower down payments, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't, the 30-year mortgage, that doesn't exist in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't exist in the rest of the world. So when people come here to this country, like you see in the immigrant community, I know a lot of top producers that are white that are, like doing phenomenal with Haitian communities, with Russian communities, because they understand that these folks, they just want to buy a house.
Yeah.
And they'll pull together all their money and they'll buy it. And if they treat them right, they'll tell their whole friends and family, right?
Is like, I always laugh because like some of my best lead sources are people I've never done a loan for.
Yeah.
Like I've just helped them or like one of their family members and they'll send me business constantly. It's the $1 million deal that I do for the great couple that I never hear from again after they close. But
right. And I think it's like that's where the trust piece that we were talking about is, you have the power as a loan officer, as the CEO of your business, to decide how you treat the community because there is a lot of folks that come in here and they trust you, and that's why during the subprime crisis, people trusted a lot of people and they got taken advantage of.
Yeah.
But if you treat them the right way, you're going to build business, you're going to build referrals. But you're right. They won't rate shop you for they meet you, they like you, and you come first. They're like, okay, let's go. You show me the way.
Exactly. So you mentioned community. So I just want to take it there real quick before we finish up. So I know you do a ton in the community. I know you've invested personally in a project that you're very passionate about. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about that because again, a lot of people say they give back to the community or they want to bring, and I think what you've done with the Ramova Theatre is actually pretty unique.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. No, that's great. The Ramova Theatre comes from a effort that started in 2016, 2017 when I was investing with my friends.
Yeah.
So we encourage, if you're in this industry, you're in it to help people, but this could be a very profitable industry, right? You can make money. But if you invest in real estate, buy buildings.
Don't blow it on BMWs and Mercedes. Yeah,
exactly. Get an LLC, understand how that works, right? And so I was investing with friends, and we created a small private equity group. It's called the Scala Capital, and I created the group. And a friend of mine from college knew that I was investing in Chicago. And he called me up one day and said, hey, man, I'm in New York. I work with Endeavor. Endeavor's like the company that owns UFC.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
So he's one of the executives, and we went to college together.
Wow.
And he's like, I got this concept, and I want to, invest in Chicago. I'm going to move out there. But, I need help raising money, and I want people from Chicago, from the community, to be part of the ownership structure. He's like, can you do it? And this was raising more money than I ever, had done before. I raised, previously $200,000. This was raising $6 million.
Yeah.
But I was okay. Let's go. Let's do it, right?
Yeah.
And once I understood what it was about, so I understood this was a concept to revitalize a historical landmark theater, the Ramova Theatre, which was located in Bridgeport, what used to be a sundown town. Bridgeport, back in the day.
Yeah.
So not the best, racial relations in Bridgeport in the South Side, even though it was in the South Side. But the group that started coming around was very diverse, and Bridgeport's come a long way in the past 20 years because it's not very diverse. It's got a great community, Irish, originally. So there's still Irish Italian, but there is now Mexican. There is also, you got Chinatown, Bronzeville.
Yeah.
Like it's very well located. And there's been a lot of activity in Bridgeport. So what was missing was a community hub. And like you said, I just wanted, for me, if I was in my 20s and somebody was like, hey, Camilo, you have an opportunity to be a part of a landmark theater that's going to bring music and community and arts, I would be like, that sounds like the coolest thing ever. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So when that opportunity came in, I was like, I hadn't done it. I was like, we'll figure it out. We're gonna make this happen. We're gonna do it. We're gonna make this happen. And that was like 2018, 19 that I came across the opportunity, and then my role was as a founding partner was to raise the equity from the group, and it took about 2 years to talk to about 500 individuals that I thought were high net worth, and then ended up getting about 49 investors into that. All private. It was, and then with Tyler, we worked with the city, but the result was the Ramova Theatre opened up doors in December of 2023, so early 2024. Yeah. It's a theater. It's got a brewery and a grill. Our brewery partner is a world-renowned brewery from Brooklyn that they came out here, other half. And, in the South Side, there was not a lot of, community activity, but, we have, yoga, we have farmers markets, we have, things for the community kids. There's a game night happening where kids are coming in and playing video games.
Great.
It's actually pretty fun. I'm going to take my daughter.
I was going to say,
tomorrow. Play a little Mario Kart. But in addition to the music and the talent, I mean, we had Common's been there. Chance, the rapper, he's a partner. Jennifer Hudson's a partner. Quincy Jones, rest in peace, was a partner. And then we have a lot of people from the community that came from my NAHREP network. And real estate, folks like, had I known you back then, I would have been like, hey,
I would have done it.
To be a part owner.
Yeah, oh my God, I think it's awesome.
So it was one of those things where, and now, from an investment component, I sit on the board, but I'm not there day to day. It's an investment. It's like, instead of buying a building, I invested into this group. And, it's if you haven't been to the Ramova Theatre, definitely check it out. It's one funny thing is like, I'm in my mid 40s now, and we got the investors, and sometimes they're like, okay, so who's going to play? And and I'm like, well, look, these people have 7 million followers, but we've never heard of them. Exactly. We've never heard of them. And so it's just like, but as long as they sell out, that's all we care about. And so I was talking to my fiance, and I was like, hey, let's go check out one of the shows. She's like, okay, fine. We found one of the DJs, and then it's like the main act goes on at 1 a.m.
Oh yeah, I'm like 4 hours into sleep by then.
So I was like, okay, I'll be at the yoga event.
Exactly. So before we end, I just want to, one of the things that make us who we are, obviously, first and foremost, your dad. Okay. So what has that been experience? Because obviously, I'm a dad. That takes on a whole nother life of its own. So what is that? What have you learned from being a dad and, obviously juggling work and setting an example for your daughter, and what's that been like?
Oh man. I tell people, I don't think the type of love, the level of love that exists until you're a parent, and then you're a dad. Because for me, being real, you have the ego, you love yourself, and then, you love your partner, but you probably love yourself a little bit more. Yeah. With a kid, you love that kid more than you love yourself for sure.
And you don't understand it until you experienced it. Yeah. Like no matter anyone tries to prepare you for being a dad, it's still one of those things that until you experience it, it's really life-changing.
Yeah. It's like, and so, I think of that piece, and then I think of also, being a father has given me clarity as far as like why, how I live my life. Yeah. And, focus into the next steps that I'm taking. Yeah. I tell people and friends, because a lot of people are choosing not to have kids. Yeah. And that's that's fine.
Yeah.
But I say, I don't think you experience everything that this life journey can give you until you have your own child and raise children.
I think too, like seeing life through their eyes, it can make you appreciate things so much more.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of the things that we take for granted, and all of a sudden, like I always, use the example of taking my son to Disney, or like I tell a story, like we went to Disney one year. It was just me and Jen before we had kids. And we hated it, and then we go there with our son, and it's like, my wife's got the bunny ears on, like, it's like a totally different experience because you're watching, you're having them experience. But, obviously, like, how much do you think about like the impact that you have here and like, set an example for your daughter, and like, does that really kind of shape who you are today now that you've been a father? How old's your daughter?
6.
So, you're kind of getting into the prime years where they're starting to get more aware of things and who dad is, what he does, and how he helps people. So is that, kind of changing the conversation a little bit?
I think it's important that you live and find a purpose.
Yeah.
And so, it's just resonating more on that, right? Like, I tell people, I was having recently a conversation with some family about what advice would I give to a son or a daughter, and if it would be different, because people were talking about like the gender thing, and I was like, look, I do think that I would give a son different advice than I would give a daughter, and I was talking about, I think with us as men, we become men when we get up with a purpose in the morning.
Yeah.
If you get up in the morning, I don't care if you're 20 or 45. If you don't take the first step and have a purpose, you're still a boy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so find your purpose. Right? Like that would be it, right?
100%,
And so I think it's like, with it's like finding that purpose and being a good father for me, it's part of that.
Did you have a lot of like kind of life lessons, failures along the way that really kind of shaped?
How much time you got, man?
Well, I know. I mean, it's a lot of my story as well. Yeah, dude. But is that kind of shaped, kind of who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely have failed.
Yeah.
And learned. My mom gave me a really good compliment. She said, cuando te caes para adelante, which means when you fall, at least you fall forward. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
so like I try to learn, but as I'm learning as I fail. But whether it's property that I bought, friendships, relationships, I failed at all of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
you know what the hardest thing is going to be is letting your daughter fail.
Oh, no.
I'm dealing with that with my son right now. Yeah. My wife and I were just having this conversation, like you want to control the environment,
right?
But it's like it's the hardest thing to do is to kind of, like your mom gave you such great advice, because that's the lesson is in the failure, not them shielding you from the failure.
Exactly.
And it's like
that's
the biggest gift I think you can give your kids, is like letting them kind of learn the hard way, and then being there to kind of give them the pep talk afterwards. And that, because too many parents they're helicopter parents, they're trying to control the environment. I had this classic story where Jake was in this soccer tournament, and like they gave trophies to like every single person. Yeah. Okay. And like they're all up on like they finished last place. Yeah. And like my wife was so upset with me because I'm like, Jen, I can't handle, like, why are they up there on the stage? Like, why are they holding a trophy? Like, they should be over in the, like, because I'm just thinking, like, you gotta but it's hard nowadays. Like, but that's really the difficult part is, but I feel like, some of the biggest failures that I've had, and I've had many, really shaped who I am today. And it's why I probably lead better than I would have if I didn't have that failure, because it really shapes who you are.
I think it makes you a more interesting person. Yeah. Because you've lived. Yeah. And you haven't had the fear of making decisions and choices. I say a bad choice is better to me than no choice. Yeah. Right? Some people just got to like stagnate, and they make decisions from a place of fear, and they don't do anything. And then, I'd rather do something and fail and then learn and then do something again.
I think not being afraid of failure is where the best, I always say the best things happen when you get uncomfortable. Yeah. And you're not, afraid of failure. So I could continue this conversation for a while, but I don't want to keep you any longer. But I just have one last question. We ask everybody that.
Okay.
So
all right.
We'll have a little bit of fun. So if it wasn't the mortgage business, money's not an object. Okay. What is kind of the dream job for you that you would love what would Camilo be doing if it wasn't this? That if money was not an object?
I think I would have liked to be behind the camera in directing and screenwriting.
Okay.
So when I was coming out of University of Illinois with a communication degree, I had a offer to work in New York for NBC. It was like a $25,000 a year offer. And I didn't take it because it was like the only people that could do that in New York are people that have like wealthy parents that pay their rent.
Yeah, because there's nowhere to live in New York.
And but it was my goal back then was to get behind a camera, create awesome content, whether it was series or movies. And there's a creative side of me that likes that. And
do you paint or do anything outside of work? Or
I paint. I play the guitar a little bit, not
play
great,
the guitar?
but I paint and a little bit, doodle a little bit.
What's your passion outside of work if it's not?
I snowboard. I drink wine. I have my sommelier. But the other thing that I would do would be make wine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, that would be great.
Yeah. But I was talking to somebody and a buddy of mine, and he's like, "Look, you could still do all that."
Yeah, so, that's how I was going to end with. I was going to tell you, you can still do creative stuff, from behind the camera. You can still do a bunch of stuff with that and find your creative outlet. You can still buy a winery after you, develop this great stuff and retire and live on a winery. Like, you can do all those things.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing about what we do.
Yeah, you got to come to a show.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah. But it's not going to be 1 a.m. I need
age appropriate.
Do you have like an afternoon matinee or something that I can go to?
I'm gonna cop the board.
Yeah, exactly. I need like a 5 p.m. If I'm gonna go out late, I got to go to bed early. Like I just turned 50, so I can't I can't hang like I used to.
That's
I just talked about this because I used to I worked at the Board of Trade, so I was down at the Board of Trade, and I had to be up at 4:30 in the morning. And I was, single, younger. I was going out every night downtown.
Oh my gosh!
And I get done at 3. I would go home and sleep for 4 hours, and then I'd go out all night.
Yeah.
Come home and sleep for like an hour or two, and then go right. And he would just do it over and over. And I never I just didn't think anything of it. Now if I go out, it takes me 5 days to recover. Yeah. It just doesn't work that way. So I want to thank you, Camilo. Since the moment that I've met you and heard your story and what you brought, you've been nothing but helpful to my team, myself, and we're super blessed to have you at Rate. It's been inspiring. It's why I wanted to have you here to talk about this, because to me, the more we can talk about you and what you're doing, I hope we can get more people involved in helping the cause and contributing, because I think that's what we need more input from all of us. So I just want to thank you for everything you brought to myself, my team, Devante, Jose. It's been massive. And the best thing about Camilo is the moment you call, you always get back to me right away. And you never say no, and I don't try to push that too much, but you're always so willing to help. I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I want to say that we need more leaders like you. Seeing you, how you help others, and some people don't want to do that because they think small.
Yeah.
They think that's bringing up the competition. You look at the value, you see the difference, and you're investing. And so I'm looking forward to keeping it going, man.
I look forward to it. And we'll do this again sometime, and we'll catch up. Maybe it'll be after I go to the Ramova Theatre.
We'll do the update.
We'll do a recap. We'll do a recap.
I love it.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome, man.